Three, two, one, here we go. Rainman's Take podcast. Observations on the world we live in. My take on current events and other topics of interest. Also, interviews with some really cool people. So let's get the conversation going. Hey, everybody, it's the Rain Man. Just want to give a quick shout out to everybody watching. Thank you very much. I know you're going to find this next raindrop thought-provoking. I feel very strongly about these subjects, and I know you do too. So go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. That way we can continue bringing you great content in the future. So thanks again for being a part of Rain Man's Take, and enjoy this raindrop. Hey guys, it's the Rain Man with another raindrop this week about Elon Musk. I find Elon Musk a fascinating character, and the recent news around him has been very interesting. He's been in the news a lot lately. Twitter, SpaceX, the Starlink satellite system. And I just found all the stories about him to be very thought-provoking. I wanted to give my take on why I find him so fascinating. I obviously don't know him personally, so I'm making all my judgments based on what I hear and read on the mainstream media, as well as other outlets like Joe Rogan's interview with him early on in the year. But there are things that he's doing that I'm definitely on board with. And until I find out something about him that's completely against how I see things, I'm going to continue to get excited about what he's doing. Not that what my opinion of him means anything. It's just my observations on what's happening currently. A friend of mine made an interesting observation in the past after working as the right-hand man for a billionaire. Basically, she said, anyone who is a billionaire is weird. Not like normal people. Even people worth multi-hundreds of millions of dollars aren't as weird as billionaires. And I found that interesting and a humorous observation. And I'm sure Elon Musk kind of falls into that category. Leaving all the insights into his personal and family life aside, here is what really interests me about Musk. One, his views about Twitter, SpaceX, and the Starlink satellite system. First of all, Twitter. First of all, I'm all in for him taking control. I hate the censorship that is happening there. Free speech means all speech, even the stuff that you don't agree with. What I loved about his original announcement was how the Twitter employees just went insane. If there was ever any question about Twitter's motivations in their censorship, it was completely shown to be the leftist propaganda tool that I believe it is, right there for all to see. Musk says he wants to restore Twitter to a bastion of free speech, and only time will tell if he's serious and then if he can actually successfully do it. Again, I'll wait and see. But right now, I love watching Twitter's collective childlike tantrums and their unashamed defense of the censorship and propaganda machine they've created, showing their true colors. One thing I found interesting was Musk's comments on Trump's new Truth social media as being an echo chamber for the right. He wants to stop Twitter from being the left's echo chamber and return to a free speech platform for all to participate in. I think normal people can differentiate what is bullshit and what isn't. I hope it's not misguided faith in the average Twitter user to think that people are smarter than that. But I also understand that a lot of people get their news in 140 character increments, which I don't agree with. My original premise for this podcast is get as formed from as many sources as possible so that you can make informed decisions. I'll be watching intently to see how the whole Twitter situation plays itself out. His politics seem to be varied and do not fall into the strict orthodoxy of the current right-left paradigm, even though conservatives are very excited about his plans for Twitter. The New York Times ran an article titled The Elusive Politics of Elon Musk by Jeremy Peters in April 16th, 2022. In the article, and I'm quoting here, it states, he is frequently described as libertarian, though that label fails to capture how paradoxical and random his politics can be. He has no shortage of opinions on the most pertinent and divisive issues of the day, from COVID-19 lockdowns, which he called fascist, to immigration restrictions. Very much disagree, he said. Continuing on with the article, there's not much consistency in the miscellany of his public statements or his profuse Twitter commentary, except that they often align with his business interests. And despite the intense partisan reaction to his unsolicited bid to buy Twitter, his opaque politics make it difficult to say whether the elation and fear about how he would run the company are justified. And the article concludes by saying, but given Mr. Musk's largely non-denominational political philosophy, some on the right were less critical. Ann Coulter, a frequent presence on Twitter, said that the billionaire entrepreneur struck her as mostly apolitical and mostly about promoting himself. And that's probably the more accurate description of him, I would say. I'm okay with that because life is not absolutes. And one can have various opinions on things. In fact, I would say most people are like this, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. How many times have you heard someone say, I'm a fiscal conservative, but a social liberal? Let Twitter be wide open. I think people are smart enough to see through the noise. The ones that don't are such a small population, and they are on both sides of the aisle. The left decries misinformation because those things conflict with the narrative that they're trying to promote. Violence is a result of something read on Twitter or used as the reason for violence, although it only seems that the right violence is being reported on. But it happens with left-leaning lunatics as well. Thankfully, those are very small minorities. Unfortunately, they make the headlines, so it seems they are a larger, more menacing subset of the population. Going on to SpaceX, my take is we as a species need to constantly be exploring, and space is the future. Critics say we should be focusing on making things better here on Earth. I agree, but we also need visionaries to help us move forward, and that's in space. I'm totally into SpaceX and have watched several of the launches and missions. I especially love the technology, the new age spacesuits, which are literally right out of 60s sci-fi movies, and the huge flat screen consoles inside the Falcon Heavy capsule. Space is going to be so important in all aspects of life, as evidenced by the increase in space exploration and many countries vying for dominance there. US, China, Russia, Japan, just to name a few. It still blows my mind watching the SpaceX booster rockets land themselves so they can be reused, which is a huge money and time saver, which will help speed up space launches. An article in the LA Times from 2015 was critical of Musk using government subsidies to grow his wealth and empire. The title of the article was Elon Musk's Growing Empire is Fueled by $4.9 billion in Government Subsidies. It was by Jerry Hirsch, and again, it was in 2015. To quote the article, Tesla Motors, Solar City, and space exploration technologies known as SpaceX together have benefited from an estimated $4.9 billion in government support, according to data compiled by the Times. The figure underscores a common theme running through his emerging empire, a private-public financing model underpinning long-shot startups. He definitely goes where the government money is, said Dan Dolev, an analyst at Jefferies Equity Research. That's a great strategy, but the government will cut you off one day. Musk and his company's investors enjoy most of the financial upside of the government support, while taxpayers shoulder the cost. Okay. My take on that is that government bet has obviously paid off as SpaceX technology is now operational and succeeding. Falcon Heavy is the vehicle that takes the astronauts to the International Space Station currently. And SpaceX has also won the contract to build the lunar landing craft for the next moon missions. And it's interesting because that contract is currently being contested in court by Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin space venture. So we'll see where that goes. Government investment, i.e. subsidies, has always been a part of such grandiose and risky endeavors. To further quote the article, SpaceX, though it depends far more on government contracts than subsidies, received an incentive package in Texas for a commercial rocket launch facility. The state put up more than $15 million in subsidies and infrastructure spending to help SpaceX build a launch pad in rural Cameron County at the southern tip of Texas. Local governments contributed an additional $5 million. Included in the local subsidies is a 15-year property tax break worth $3.1 million to SpaceX. Officials say the development will bring in about $5 million more over that period than the local school district otherwise would have collected. So there's $5 million more than we have ever seen from that property, said Dr. Lisa Garcia, the superintendent of the Point Isabel Independent School District. It is a remote area. All it is sand dunes. On the federal level, just look at the Mercury and Apollo projects in the 1960s. An article from Quartz Business website titled "NASA Has Always Needed Private Companies to Go to the Moon" by Tim Fernholz, which was published in June 24th of 2021. The article says, I'm quoting the article here. "We got to the moon without private contractors, if I'm not mistaken," U.S. Representative Jamal Bowman said yesterday. The NASA administrator, Bill Nelson, had a calmer response. "In the Apollo program, Mr. Congressman, we got to the moon with American corporations. A dozen major U.S. companies worked closely with the U.S. Space Agency to build the vehicles that took the first humans to the lunar surface. NASA scientists and engineers planned the mission and the technology needed to accomplish it, then worked with the most advanced tech companies of the day to produce the rockets, the capsules, the landers, the suits, and the rovers. There's no doubt Apollo was a big government program, but the private sector was essential," end quote. So it seems to be working out for the government and the taxpayers for that matter, because all the success of Musk's SpaceX program. Again, there's a huge debate whether or not we should even be investing such staggering sums into space exploration. Me personally, I'm all for it, and I hope it continues, because I think the long-term benefits of mankind are worth it. One final thought on this debate, which shows the nearsighted thinking of most people. To quote the article again, "As the U.S. plans its return to the moon, a debate is emerging about the role of private firms. NASA has hired them to do everything from sending robots on the lunar surface to developing the landers that will carry humans there. In the House, lawmakers like Science Committee Chair Edie Bernice Johnson are skeptical that companies can even take on those tasks. This isn't a crazy worry. Landing on another astronomical body is a greater challenge than flying to low Earth orbit, and there are far fewer obvious non-government customers in the lunar transit market." But I think that's going to change in the future. All right, so the third venture of Musk's that I really am interested in is the Starlink satellite system. This is one of the very interesting ones. Starlink's goal is to bring broadband internet everywhere on Earth. Okay, what is it? According to whatis.com, Starlink is a satellite constellation system that aims to deliver global internet coverage. The system is ideally suited for rural and geographically isolated areas where internet connectivity is unreliable or non-existent. Instead of using cable technology such as fiber optics to transmit internet data, a satellite system uses radio signals through the vacuum of space. Ground stations broadcast signals to satellites in orbit, which in turn relay the data back to the Starlink users on Earth. Each satellite in the Starlink constellation weighs 573 pounds and has a flat body. One SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket can fit up to 60 satellites on board. SpaceX has proposed a constellation of almost 42,000 tablet-sized satellites circling the globe in low orbit to meet this demand. So the scope is incredible. This is what I find odd, however. Starlink is underway and operational, yet the government cut funding for it. According to a Bloomberg article titled "FCC Rejects Musk's Bid for $886 million of Broadband Subsidy for Starlink." This was by Todd Shields from August 10, 2022. Quoting from the article, Elon Musk's request for $886 million in U.S. subsidies for the beaming broadband services to rural areas via his SpaceX satellites was rejected by U.S. regulators. Funding Musk's network of Starlink satellites wouldn't be the best use of limited broadband subsidies, the Federal Communications Commission said in a news release Wednesday. The FCC cannot afford to subsidize ventures that are not delivering the promised speeds or are not likely to meet program requirements, FCC Chairwoman Jessica Rosen-Worcel said. I find that interesting because in 2020, the government gave Musk almost $1 billion in subsidies for the Starlink system. So the timing of that refusal in August, I find interesting. What's odd to me is that currently the Ukrainians are using the Starlink pretty effectively in war-torn Ukraine. So it seems to be working. Musk recently threatened to stop funding the almost $20 million a month he's losing to let Ukraine use his technology for free and demanded the U.S. government flip the bill. Then, a few days later, he reversed course and said that they can continue to use it. So there is something very interesting about the timing of each of these events. At least that's my impression of it. My view is that once all the satellites are up and the government is My view is that once all the satellites are up and operational, the government is going to have a hard time keeping Musk under control. And who knows how that's going to play itself out. So to conclude this raindrop, I'm very interested in Elon Musk and these three ventures to see how this all plays itself out in the future. It almost feels like it's the richest man in the world versus the most powerful government in the world. It feels like the rescinding of subsidies for Starlink in August was a shot across the bow for him to be careful what he does with Twitter, which is one of the government's favorite propaganda platforms. Could that happen to SpaceX as well? Who knows? But I'm very interested to see how all this stuff plays out. Musk is currently the richest man in the world and is eccentric as hell, which makes him a very polarizing figure. You either love him or you hate him. I'm going to take a look and see attitude, but I will say this. I find myself saying he's either really going to move the world forward or he is an evil James Bond type villain looking to control the world. We'll see how it all plays out here in the near future. So that's my raindrop for today. I appreciate you all listening. Like I always do, I want to finish off by saying if you're in the military, the police departments, fire departments, first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. Stay safe. This is the Rain Man. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, observations on the world we live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.